A man steps off a train in East Germany. The morning air is crisp, unforgiving. Just before the doors slide shut, he subtly drops a crumpled piece of paper onto the tracks. Seconds later, another man, unremarkable in a gray trench coat, sweeps in to retrieve it. This isn't just littering. It's a tiny act of defiance that will plunge the first man, Wulfgang Templene, into an obsessive nightmare. Templene isn't a bomber or an assassin. He's an enemy of the state for a far more dangerous crime. He dared to organize a small group to discuss human rights. For this, the Stasi, East Germany's notorious secret police, has assigned at least 10 collaborators to follow his every breath. They will sit beside him in cafes, ride the same trains, open his mail, and build a file on him that will rival the length of several Bibles. Their goal isn't to jail him. That would create a martyr. Their goal is to break him without leaving a single trace. To understand this level of cruelty, you have to understand its architect, Erich Mielke, a rough-hewn fighter from Berlin who, as a young man, gunned down 2 policemen to prove his loyalty to the communist cause. Exiled to Moscow during World War II, Mielke got a front-row seat to Stalin's paranoia at its peak. He brought this blueprint back to East Germany, determined to build a police force so indispensable, so ruthless, that the country couldn't exist without it, or without him. While the Stasi began with explicit terror and sham trials, they quickly learned that blatant oppression wasn't good branding for their socialist paradise. So, they retreated into the shadows, shifting their focus to the deepest, most pervasive secrecy and surveillance the world had ever seen. It's 16 a.m. The observation on Wulfgang Templene, codenamed Central 1, begins. He will be stalked for the next 17 straight hours. But Templene is not an outlier. By the 1980s, the Stasi had tens of thousands of these operations running simultaneously. Their real power wasn't in their uniformed officers, but in the ordinary citizens they commanded. No 20th century country devoted more resources to domestic spying than East Germany. They had about 1 secret policeman for every 177 people, a ratio far exceeding the KGB or even the Gestapo. But that professional force was dwarfed by the network of unofficial collaborators, up to 200,000 civilian spies crawling across the country. Neighbors, co-workers, even children, discreetly betraying their communities for cash, a career boost, or just a misguided sense of adventure. The Stasi's collaborators were, in their own words, their main weapon against the enemy. The methods they used felt like they were lifted from a dark spy novel. In one unassuming East Berlin building disguised as a post office, hundreds of employees steamed open tens of thousands of letters a day, recording their contents and hunting for forbidden items from the West. In another headquarters, Department 26 connected taps to public phones and switchboards, automatically recording thousands of private conversations. They often didn't even have the staff to analyze them all, they just kept the terrifying stockpile in reserve. Elite engineers, known as the OTS, worked in highly secured areas, developing James Bond-style gadgets, cameras hidden in buttonholes, microphones secreted inside fake sugar cubes. Technicians would map out apartments to perfectly position bugs in lamps, walls, and ceiling moldings. When targets tried to escape surveillance by holding sensitive conversations during ping-pong games in the park, the Stasi simply started bugging the trees. But the invasion went deeper than just listening. If Stasi agents visited your home, they might also secretly take your underwear or a piece of fabric from a chair. Why? For their vast archive of smells, a literal library of body odors used to train dogs to track down people trying to escape. For targets they hadn't yet identified, or those they needed to tail in a crowd, they developed a silent secret method: radioactive tagging. Dissidents were often tagged with high doses of scandium, sprayed onto their cars, rooms, or even directly onto them. Agents would then track them using a hidden, vibrating Geiger counter worn under their coat. The Stasi knew the risks. Their own internal calculations confirmed that just 2 contaminated banknotes in a man's pocket posed a health hazard so severe it came close to castration. Years later, several dissidents would succumb to rare cancers, suspected to be connected to this radiation exposure. On the evening of May 17, 1987, Templene attends a meeting of his human rights group at a friend's apartment. The stakes are high, but he feels safe, surrounded by people he's known for years, like Lot Pavlitzak, a friend from university. What Templene doesn't know is that Pavlitzak isn't there for the lecture on Hungarian history. He's there to spy. His trusted university friend has been reporting on him for over a decade. Later that night, Pavlitzak walks home with another group member, Ibrahim Burma. Pavlitzak carefully memorizes their conversation, eager to report on Burma's high moral independence. But here's the devastating twist. Burma is doing the exact same thing. Two spies, both unofficial collaborators, spying on each other, neither one the wiser, both reporting back on Templene. On that one fragile evening, 4 out of the 16 people in that room were working for the Stasi. But constant surveillance and betrayal were just the setup. A while back, Stasi Captain Gerhard Ha had started targeting Templene with the agency's ultimate weapon, an operational procedure codified by Mielke himself. They called it Zersetzung, which means decomposition or breakdown. The goal was explicit: systematically destroy a person's reputation, organize their professional downfall, undermine their self-confidence, and create deep suspicion within their social circles. Templene, who had a good job at the Academy of Sciences, found his career systematically sabotaged by the Stasi until he was struggling to piece together a living. Then, the terror became absurd. A man shows up at his home demanding delivery instructions for an expensive car Templene never ordered, complete with his forged signature. That evening, 2 more delivery men ring his doorbell. In the following weeks, the attacks intensify. Unwanted deliveries arrive in mountains: electronics, antique furniture, a cement mixer, thousands of condoms, kilos of parakeet food, and hundreds of live chickens. Templene is forced to send them all away, confronting angry drivers who expect to be paid. The stress consumes him, distracting him from his activism, and that was precisely the point. But Templene refused to yield. By December 1987, he stepped up his activism even more. So the Stasi escalated. They launched smear campaigns, assigning him a spacious apartment he couldn't afford just to spread rumors that he'd been paid off to betray the resistance. When that failed, they aimed for the heart of his life. They planned to have an agent seduce his wife, Regina, weaponizing tactics they used to extract intelligence to destroy a dissident's family. Though that specific plan stalled, the ultimate blow landed. Regina and Wulfgang were arrested. With no trial, they were forced into exile. Their children, like the children of so many dissidents, were snatched up and placed in a state home, anything to crack him. For other victims of Zersetzung, the tactic was simpler: driving them insane. Agents would sneak into their apartments and subtly rearrange clocks or furniture, just enough to make them question their own reality. Years later, victims of this psychological warfare would show higher levels of extreme distrust and suffer from severe heart problems. Exiled to West Germany, Wulfgang and Regina refused to be silenced, maintaining contact with activists back home. Their perseverance paid off. Their arrest sparked a massive wave of protests. The people had finally had enough. By November 1989, the Berlin Wall came down. They hurried back home, ready to help rebuild a democratic Germany. The physical walls were gone, but the emotional scars remained. After reunification, former citizens were allowed to see their Stasi files. Millions requested them, and the revelations were traumatic. Trusted friends, co-workers, and even spouses were revealed as spies. In one famous case, a husband had reported on his wife's sex life and whispered bedroom conversations for years. East Germany earned a chilling moniker: a nation of traitors. The damage was also measurable in dark statistics. Between 1949 and 1990, about 50% more East Germans took their own lives than West Germans. As for the architect of this intrusive nightmare, Erich Mielke was imprisoned after reunification for the murders he committed in 1931, but never for his crimes as head of the Stasi. When he died, crowds celebrated, and his grave was defaced within hours. Looking back on the utter failure of his police state, Mielke offered a chilling, nihilistic epitaph. "Millions have died for nothing. Everything we fought for, it has all amounted to nothing." Thank you for watching. If you found this story as important as we did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into history. We'll see you next time.